Welcome to Key Conversations, where you get to connect with the best of the music business, unlocking the secrets to exploding your music career, presented by In the Key of Success. I'm your host, Cheryl B. Engelhardt. The conversations you're about to hear are between our special guest and participants of my MX4 course, the Marketing and Branding, Money-Making, Mentorship Mastermind for Musicians. They are singers, songwriters, composers, producers, and artists just like you, asking their burning questions of our experts while transforming their careers over 6 weeks. If you think this could be you, check out mx4course.com to schedule a free half-hour coaching call with me to see if we'd be a good fit. So, let's get started. Today's music industry expert interview is with Kristin Hoffmann, who not only has the most gorgeous voice on the face of the planet, she's like this gorgeous soul. She is. So Kristin and I actually went to high school together, and we were in a madrigal group. Yes. Very, very proper, amazing music. That sort of started my music career, and I didn't even know it at the time, but it was a really great experience. And I always thought that Kristin was like the coolest person because she had a CD. And I was like, what if I was able to actually have an iPod where my name showed up? I'm like, that's impossible. That's like, she goes to Juilliard. She's like in high school and she's going to Juilliard for voice. Like, no way. And then like 6 years later, I finally catch up and I'm thinking like, oh my God, that's amazing. So Kristin's always sort of been like a first person that introduced the world of the music industry to me. And since then, she's had like a 3-decade career. I mean, you've been singing since you were like 1 or something ridiculous.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. And she's sung for thousands and thousands of people and opened for Feist and Wallflowers. And did you just come back from performing for like the government of Japan or something?
Yeah, I just did a concert on Mount Fuji it was amazing. So it was, anyway, yes.
Yeah, so she's got this huge long career, and in the MX4 course that we're in right now, we're in the middle of it, and we've done our branding, we've sort of figured out our demographics, and we're all about, creating our own content, sharing it, figuring out what it is we're selling, whether it's like an experience or a product or a service, and how to really make a career of music and make it financially feasible. So I know that's something that you've succeeded at, and so I'm interested to hear sort of your story, how you got to where you are now, and the different things that you do, and the highlights in your career that got you to now. And then I'll open up to questions from them that they prepared from doing research on you. So yes, so just to get started, like what's the highlights of your career that have gotten you to where you are right now?
I feel like it, my career has been split up into multiple lives, but highlights definitely as a young person starting out and making my first CD was one of the biggest learning experiences about what it takes to actually put out a record and sell it. So my first experiences, I actually look back to being in high school. I was able to work out a deal with the bookstore so that people at the school could sign CDs to their bookstore accounts. And I sold a few thousand records that way. And so I look back now and I'm like, oh, it's finding the key to, I think, having a successful career is finding the loopholes. So at our high school, I thought about it and I was like, oh, these kids have bookstore accounts where they can just buy as many things and it goes to their parents' accounts. Okay, so that was the loophole there, which enabled me to sell a few thousand records at my high school. And so I think back to that, I'm like, how do we find the loopholes in our lives, right? How do we find that space where it's the out-of-box thinking that other people maybe haven't been accessing or not as much, So that was a definite learning experience. Then highlights and heartbreaks, you could say. They were kind of mixed. I got signed to Capitol Records when I was 19, just about to turn 20. And I was with Capitol Records for a couple years. And it was an amazing experience on some levels because I got to work with, it was the first time I got to work with kind of the professionals of the industry and learned so much about making a record on another level. However, then I also learned the heartbreak of the music industry, which is when people don't necessarily understand who you are or what your brand is, and they don't understand how to support you or market you properly. And so that, after 2 years, ended in me, us parting ways and me being on my own again. And then I made another record on my own, which was a total highlight, total empowerment. It was called Divided Heart. And that was the first time that I worked on placement for television shows. And I got a couple songs placed in Dawson's Creek, which showed me, that was the first experience when I realized how powerful licensing can be. Mm-hmm. And that was so exciting to have my first song in a couple television programs and on a soap opera. And I realized, wow, this is really a key to longevity in the music industry that I hadn't even thought of tapping into before. So I did my own record, and that record, actually having that and owning that record, has enabled me to do many things on my own and has actually been a sustaining element along my path. So that one Divided Heart record, licensing a few songs and selling that along the way, has been one of my little continuous cash flows, you could say. After that, I signed another record deal with Interscope Records. So another major label. I was like on the fence, like, do I do this again? And then I decided, yes, I'm going to give it another go. So this time I was supported by people who really did understand me. But again, I learned the harsh lesson that even when certain people understand you in the music business, having a whole continuous team that goes all the way up to the top, that totally, gets you and it flows down in this beautiful way, is very challenging. So I had this team around me that totally got me, and I was making a record in this beautiful place in nature and supported by amazing musicians. But then, depending on the day, the head of, the president of the company would either be, if he was just in a bad mood, suddenly it could like make or break things, And so again, after almost 3 years with them, and another 3 years of super hard work, my A&R woman got laid off, and I learned the hard way that it doesn't matter how much energy and love you put into something in the music business kind of machine. Still, we ended up parting ways, and I didn't get to keep that record again. So both records I made with major labels, it was like highlights and my greatest learning experiences. Since then, I made another couple records totally on my own, and I learned I got more into producing and generating my own income flow 100%. And I have to say, I've made probably the biggest highlight of my career has been overall learning how to sustain myself and how to generate enough shows, teaching, records, play the whole field and become a diverse individual so that I can sustain myself. So that, it's been now almost 10 years since I was with Interscope, and the past 10 years, I would say, has been the most rewarding, even though there were some of these more flashy highlights before. This 10-year journey has been definitely the most meaningful to me. And I've learned that I can make a better living on my own than with the best major labels. So it's been a beautiful and very rocky road to learn all this. But anyway, that's kind of the highlights and the highlights of the challenges.
No, that's awesome, and it's actually really encouraging. You don't hear that a lot, like, me doing it on my own is more fulfilling, because I think as musicians, there's so many of us that have the pie in the sky. We see the Katy Perrys and the Sarah Bareilles and the people doing the big tours, and we're like, well, we know they can't do that on their own. We know that they have to have that label support or not. Like, is that actually true? And can we do the full-time, music gigging thing on our own without that support? And to hear that it's more fulfilling when you don't have the support makes sense, but it's refreshing to hear that it's actually possible. And you and I are both sort of living that example, and it's hard to, when you don't have the huge platform to let other musicians know that, it's hard to, which is why I'm sort of doing this podcast. Like, it is possible, you can do it, and it's great. Yeah, it really is great.
For sure.
So
you have to be willing to think out of the box, and that's the key, is again, finding the loophole, thinking outside of the box, being willing and able to work on all different aspects of yourself in the context of music, so that you can get to a point where you can do that job where you produce a song for somebody's wedding, or you can write the commercial song and make the right connection, or you can, be at a party and meet someone and really have a lasting impression to the point where they call you 3 weeks later and they're like, oh, I have this amazing thing that's happening. Can you come play at it? So it really does take a lot of continued energy, and it is exhausting sometimes. A lot of times it's exhausting, and I would be lying if I say that I have not hit those points where I'm like, oh my gosh, I just don't know if I can do it anymore. That there's been many of those points, but then the lasting joy for me is like knowing that I'm able to connect with people through the vehicle of music, and that's like really powerful. And I think that's one of the most important. Music is the language that we all speak, and when it's shared on a certain level, it can be, just super powerful for the artist and for all people sharing in it. So that's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
On this crazy journey.
That's awesome. I just read an article called The Day in a Life of a Music Maker. I had like one of those perfect days where like a little bit of everything, like my commercial work, my songwriting, like teaching a couple of piano lessons, voice lessons, like all that stuff was like happening. So I sort of like wrote this schedule. And in the beginning I was like, listen, this is an ideal day. I get maybe 4 of these a month. I strive for these days. And once a month, like I get I don't know if I can do this anymore. It's kind of like my occupational period. I know it passes. I know it's normal and no one knows about it. But that's what I call that. Like it's pretty much clockwork. Once a month, I'm like, I should get a real job. And then I'm like on my phone looking at like job apps, literally once a month. So it's hard, but it's, I definitely, when you have those days where everything sort of falls into place and you get to do exactly what you love. And like at the end of the day, there's some paychecks showing up. Like that's just like, okay, that's why I'm doing this too. So
yeah,
awesome.
For sure. I love that. Your occupational period.
Sorry guys out there. No one knows about it. You just sort of deal with it, and everyone has it. Yeah. Everyone, females, so, But anyway, that's my analogy. So let me open up the floor to the people on the call from the MX4 course and see if you guys have any specific questions or general questions. You're sort of representing artists and songwriters out there in the world on this podcast. So I think it's pretty cool to sort of get a bunch. It's not just me asking Kristin questions, which I also have a whole bunch of too. So let's start with Scott. Do you have any questions that have come up for Kristin? So I'm going to interject here before we get to Scott's question. I just want to share with all the listeners that are listening to this on Thursday, January 14th, 2016. You can actually hear Kristin and I sing tonight. The song that you're listening to right now is a song that we co-wrote and is on my new record, Inevitably. And if you want to come out and you're in the New York City area, we'll be singing at 7:30 at Rockwood Music Hall, Stage 2. Information is at my website, CherylBE.com. All right, let's get on to hear everything that Kristin has to say. And we'll start with Scott.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'd love to sing Madrigals with you two, actually. A little Palestrina. But I was wondering, obviously you did the big record companies, and it's one thing obviously to have a team behind you, and then to be kind of in the do-it-yourself period. I'm curious, like, how do you have that work? Because I imagine that there's some things that, you have relationships with companies that do some of the things that a record company would do for you. And then there are certain things that you probably do for yourself that you can manage. Is off the top of could you list what things that you do for yourself and then what things that you actually have like relationships with other companies?
Sure thing. That's a great question. And actually that's something I've been working on a lot lately, because I'm at a point right now where I've been doing, I would say 85% of things myself for the past 10 years. And I'm at that critical point where there are a lot of shows and opportunities coming in, and I've been trying to manage it all myself for a long time. And I'm at that turning point where I realize very deeply that I need to start to outsource some more kind of task-oriented things that I always, it's my own issue. This is something that we have to overcome, is that we usually put in great care into the daily little detailed work that we do as artists. And there's this internal feeling like, oh, maybe someone else isn't going to do this in the same way that I am, or, oh, I have to be involved in these details. And so it's kind of hard to let go sometimes and just let certain things be done by someone else that can alleviate your time and pressure. So I'm working on this very aspect right now, is how to outsource certain things. So up until this point, about 85%, I have not had a manager in about 8 years or 9 years. So I've basically been managing myself, been my own agent, been a songwriter. I even produced my last record myself and mixed it. And then the film score that just came out, I also produced that as well. So I've kind of been doing everything. The one thing that I have hired others to do is PR over the past 2 years. And that was an experiment that I felt for years I had not had the chance to tap into, even when I was on labels. We hadn't really gotten to the point yet where they had done any kind of promotion whatsoever. So I felt like when I looked at my career, that was the missing piece, that I had no idea how I would do if somebody put any energy into actually promoting me. It was always working up to that point and then never seeing the fruits of my labor. So I said, okay, PR is really expensive. This is going to be like paying another rent, right? But is it worth it? Do I want to spend my whole life with this question, this what if question? Like, would that have really helped me? Would that have not helped me? So I hit this critical point where I decided, okay, I'm going to work really, really hard, and every last penny is going to go to paying my rent and my food, and then PR, and we'll see how that goes. And I have to say, I think it's been overall a really great decision. I think I think that the marketing and the PR and help and working with people who can help to tighten up your branding, like I redid my website with help from the PR team, and that really helped me to get focused. They also kind of played the role, I would say, of a kind of light manager. You know, like it's kind of like having a group of people to hold you accountable is really important. Sometimes when we just totally isolate into our own world, we don't hold ourselves accountable in the same way as when we're working with another person or a team of people. So that element has been really great over the past 2 years. I mean, there are ups and downs with PR as well, and sometimes you have certain things that you want to get out of it, and goals that aren't necessarily, they don't feel like they're met completely, and that can be frustrating. And then sometimes something just pops out of nowhere and you're like, oh, that's amazing, I didn't even think of that, you know. So but definitely I think, you know, I've had 2 different managers in my life, and there have been a lot of good elements to having managers. And then on the flip side of that, sometimes, again, managers don't necessarily fully understand and are not in alignment with your path, which I think can hold an artist back. So what I'm thinking at this point, and at this day and age where we are, is that if you're an artist trying to do it all on your own, having some element of PR, and then finding somebody who can kind of be more of an agent who you trust to represent you, but who is not like a manager who thinks they are in charge of you and whatnot, is key. So I'm like trying to find that person that I can work with to fill in some gaps that I see. So does that answer your question?
More or less. Wow, I'm amazed how much you're able to do by yourself, including the producing and the mixing, and yeah, I'm just pretty wowed by that. But yeah, that more or less answers my question for what works for you.
Yeah, well, and I think, you know, I missed that in the highlights, but learning Pro Tools. When I learned Pro Tools when I was about 21, and the reason why I learned it was because I was sitting in the studio with my producer on Capitol Records, looking over his shoulder for a few months, watching him edit my vocals and whatnot, and I realized, oh, I think I can do this. And I had someone come to my house and give me like 4 lessons to get started, and then I just took it from there, and I co-produced my next record, Divided Heart. And that was like a huge learning experience of, oh my gosh, how to mic things. Everything was a learning experience. But learning how to capture my own songs and create them the way that I envision them was it might be the number one most important part of being able to make a living and support myself as an artist. Because when I think of how many job opportunities and how many gig opportunities have come through the vehicle of being able to produce myself or being able to create a track and record it, it's really astounding, because that's been like kind of the nuts and bolts of being able to sustain myself and express myself accurately in the way that I see fit, like in the way that I feel the music coming through me. I'm able to actually then capture it and get it out, which if you're just reliant on another producer, you can't necessarily count on the fact that they're going to understand who you are as a musician. There's definitely pros and cons to working with producers. Sometimes they bring out the best in you that you never knew, and sometimes they take you in a totally different direction than you ever imagined. So anyway, any other questions?
Yeah, that's. I just want to like tag on to that point. I do think that, especially because of, I mean, Kristin, you're sort of an anomaly as well. Like, you have the tech background, and you can do the producing and the mixing, and a lot of my income is coming from commercial, making tracks and film scores and things like that. And yeah, to be able to do that, it's great. But the thing for me that really it feels the most empowering is like, now it's a choice. Like, I'm working on my 4th record, and I've co-produced all my other records, and I did all the arrangements and everything. And I just met a producer who's really chill, and he's like, hey, I like this song that you just did. And he threw on the string arrangements he did. Like, he just threw down a track, and I'm like, I never even thought of that. That sounds great. That's totally licensable. And it's a choice. Like, I'm like, oh, I should be more into this song. I should be digging into the session and like doing this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? It's actually nice to be like, yeah, I wrote the lyrics and the melody and the chords with this other person, and now I'm just like handing it off, and it's a choice. Like, I know I can do that now, but to get someone else's ear to bring me, I'm at a critical mass point too, where I'm like, okay, what else? I've done what I do, so now maybe bringing in other people, and the guys in the MX4 course know that I'm all about the self-expression through creativity and partnership. And that partnership that's like a new thing for me, in the past like year. And sometimes for me, that means like, okay, I can do this, and it's provided me so many opportunities because I can, but now I get to choose. So that's a really cool thing for me too. But yeah, I mean, it's really, really easy. Logic, if you're an Apple person, Pro Tools, if you're doing a lot more live recording. I work in Logic as a composer, for those of you wondering, like, where should you start? If you have any familiarity with GarageBand, like, Logic is a logical next step. If you're sort of starting from scratch and you do a lot of live stuff and you're not so much composing, I think Pro Tools they both have pros and cons. I think they're both great programs. But what Kristin said, like, taking some lessons, like the Apple Store hosts Logic workshops. I think some of them are free until you get to like the very high end. It's really, really easy to go, like, just sort of sit in. There's in New York, if you're in New York City, there's DubSpot. They do all sorts of tech classes, all different programs, Ableton Live, and if you're DJing or anything. And I think having someone come in and working with you on your system and optimizing your system for 1 or 2 sessions, I think that's a huge, amazing investment. I even do that every once in a while when I get a new computer and I'm like, okay, I need to optimize this. Like, this isn't working. There's a delay here. So I think that continuing education for yourself is really valuable. So I just wanted to sort of tag that.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. And there, like you said, there's different, you just have to, as an artist, learn to listen to yourself and where you are at certain points in your career. Because, a few years ago, I made a record where I was like, I want to do the whole thing. It was called The Human Compass. And it was really about like listening to your own path. So for that record, it was like, it became pretty clear, oh, this is the record where I'm going to play all the instruments and record it and mix it myself. But then there's been other times where, I worked with David Bottrell, who's an awesome producer, and he opened my mind to so many new things that I would have never been open to on my own. He like really pushed my doors open, and I learned so much because I was able to collaborate with him in this beautiful way. So he's really been one of my mentors. And you just have to know the times, you always know inside what's right. If there's somebody who really resonates with you, who can be the perfect co-creator at a certain time or producer, just trust that, and if it's your time to do it all on your own, then that's an important lesson and time to listen to as well. One of the biggest things that I've learned is, as a musician, you're going to meet so many different people, and people get excited about your music, and there are lots of opportunities that are presented. And one of the greatest lessons is to learn to decipher and how to listen to what really resonates with you, and then also understand when something's just not right and be able to address that and kind of close that door without wasting a lot of time. Because sometimes you can say yes, yes, yes to everything, or somebody might say, oh, I want to produce your record. And on one level, it sounds awesome, but then on other levels, it doesn't work. And learning to really think through those different points and then make a concrete decision as quickly as possible really does help, because you can get bogged down by all of the different opportunities and playing at this place and this place. And you can, saying yes to too many things can be a major blockage.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Kristin.
All right, guys, stay tuned. Next week, we're going to dig in even more with Kristin about how to really make an indie career just work. That's what she's all about. It's really inspiring. So stay tuned. Please don't forget to rate and comment on iTunes and Stitcher Radio if you like this podcast. It's the best way to keep it going, get more subscribers, and continue to share this awesome information with the indie music community. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. All of the music on this podcast has been created by yours truly. The theme song is called Inevitably, written with Cameron Ernst and produced by Joey Ock. You can find all the songs, plus more information on my music career at CherylBE.com. If you want to be one of the reasons I can keep this podcast and my blog Living on Gigging going, then head to patreon.com/CBEmusic. There, you can contribute $1, $2, $5 for the creation of each of these free musician resources. Together, we can keep them coming and inspire other creative people to do what they love and do it well. Again, that's patreon.com/CBEmusic. Key Conversations is sponsored in part by Bandzoogle. They make it easy to build a beautiful website for your music. Their step-by-step system gets you online in minutes, and you can choose from hundreds of mobile-friendly themes and customize them with their easy point-and-click editor. All the features you could possibly imagine for a professional website are built in. So, because you are a Key Conversations podcast listener, you get a special 3-month free trial just for you. Go to www.inthekeyofsuccess.com/resources and click on the Bandzoogle logo to access your free extended trial.